Hi, I'm Aaron Raw, and you're watching Atheist Edge.
A women's issue. It is something that happens to both sides, and it happens from both sides. And the point of it is that the social aspects that are creating this problem, that are creating people raping other people,
Yeah.
the perspective of the rapist and what societally is happening to make that happen, that needs to be talked about just as much as how to help the victims. And
Thank you.
And so it's not about these people are just labeled as monsters and that's it. It's about how is this happening, why is it happening, how can we change our society so that it happens less from both sides.
I'm totally in agreement
And so
with that.
that's the only thing I have with that.
Yeah. Oh, we're back on camera too.
Yeah.
Oh, you already knew that? You
Kind of.
You knew we were back?
Did you get all that?
I got the ass end of it.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's not about who.
Yeah,
about
I think looking at both parties as human beings first,
Yeah.
and figuring out how this situation happened. That's what's most important, because that's what causes prevention, a real prevention. And not just making these people pariahs of society and victims and
I feel I
monsters.
need to say one thing before you jump back on your point.
Yeah.
Is that there are certain biological urges that are not, they're detrimental. They're detrimental.
Okay.
And they're based deep in our evolution.
Right.
From simian evolution,
Okay.
right? Okay, and some of these are violence, some of these are rape, some of these are just vengeance, and there's a lot of things that are part of us. It's located in the R complex, you know,
Okay.
in the reptilian brain, in the brainstem.
Right.
It's still there, and it still
Reptilian, that's
tries.
interesting.
You know what I'm saying? The R complex, the
I've
reptilian
never heard
brain.
it said that way, but that makes sense
Yeah.
because certain reptiles only have a brainstem.
Yeah, it's
cool.
in the R complex.
Interesting.
We
that it's
have a
called that.
cerebellum. We have a prefrontal.
Right.
We have a cortex.
Right.
We can suppress, and when I say we, I'm mostly talking about men, and we're the ones with the majority of the testosterone and the aggressive urges, but with the prefrontal cortex, we have the ability now, for the first time in animal evolution, to be able to suppress these things that we don't like about ourselves.
Well, okay, but if it were just about that, about biology, then you'd probably see more rape happening among
If rape
other
became legal
animals.
tomorrow-
Okay, wait.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
More rape happening among animals that don't have that prefrontal cortex is the point that you're making. What
Have
I'm
you
saying is that I think you'd see it more often. It definitely happens, but I'm saying that it doesn't happen every single male.
You sure?
Among
Have you
animals.
watched Animal Planet?
Among animals, it doesn't.
Procreation is mostly rape.
Okay, what I'm saying is that
Am I wrong?
I don't know.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is that I don't think statistically it happens every single time.
No.
I think there's a difference in that distinction about the brain. But the point of the TED Talk was, they were talking about certain parts of our society, which is also a topic of feminism, about what is perpetuating this societal permission of men to own women's bodies in that way, and to exert power. And so but there's a very clear message in say fraternities about that, and it isn't from the established like university playbook or whatever, but it's something that for whatever reason in society it's creating that idea. And what was most interesting was the testimony of the rapist about the motivations for what happened, and what made that clear line between consent blur for him. And I'm
interested in knowing that.
Yeah, and he did talk about feeling that he had a right to the girl's body, and and where does that come from and why does it happen? I think it's a very valid thing to study because, again, men, this is going to be bad, but in that way, men, not just as much, but men are in a way a victim of the system that creates that difference, and men need to be just as much a part of the conversation about rape as women for the sake of
we need more of you
getting that, and that's the point of what I think feminism is about, looking at things from that side of these are two human beings, you know, and how do we change what happened in this situation so that it doesn't happen to other people.
We need more of you.
Yeah, and so that's what I see. And that's,
I could consider
honestly,
becoming a feminist if there were more of you.
And honestly, that's what I think Emma Watson was talking about. She was inviting men.
You way more. I almost said woke. You are way more. You have transcended this way more than she has.
But I think that's what her speech was. I think, you know, she talked about, you know, keeping men out of this conversation is detrimental to the entire thing. I agree with her there. And that's the whole point. Is men, she's saying that she recognizes that men feel rejected from the conversation, and she's saying I'm extending an official invitation, because she's not saying that it hasn't always been there. She's saying that I need to say for all of humanity that we are both a part of feminism and we are both a part of this conversation, and men should be have just as much of a voice.
That's so refreshing to hear.
And that was the speech.
You would not.
That was it.
You
That's
have
Emma
no
Watson. That's he
No,
for she.
that's not the whole speech.
That is he for she.
That's not. No, sorry.
Well, what else was in it?
I don't know. I'm ignorant on the subject. It made me want to take a shower when I was done listening to her statement, though.
Okay,
the first one.
When I heard it, that was the message.
It's not what I got out of it.
Well, you know, we talked about this.
He for she means something completely different to me.
What do you think it means?
I see. Well, I don't want to repeat myself. I don't want to rehash it, but she was making some very biased, very misandrous comments.
Like what?
Don't hold me to the fire. I don't know.
What? No, I just.
I can't fact check it. I'll try to put a link in the description, but I'm not.
Well, we can just do it in another talk.
Yeah, it was cringy.
But what
what you're speaking now is way more enlightening, way more refreshing than anything she said at UN.
Honestly, I think most people would agree with what I'm saying.
People will get behind that. You could build some bridges right now.
But for me, that's what feminism is. Feminism
if
is
that
not just
were
for
only
women.
what feminism is, I would be a feminist tomorrow.
And I think when you say like I don't like feminism, like I think this version of feminism is what a lot of women think what feminism is.
Earlier,
you
said you don't know how deep this rabbit hole goes, and you don't know much about what's going on in the movement.
Well, because
if you knew, you'd know where I'm coming from. The hesitation, the reservations.
It's just that's how I see it. I see it as gender equality, and that's what that means.
Gosh damn.
Is that when you're looking at something like rape, I think that the situation itself, both people are victims of the situation. And I'm not going to say that men, that I don't want to discount victims of rape as not being extremely victimized and extremely hurt.
It's a horrible crime.
Yes. But what I'm saying is, as a society, if we can look at both people as human beings and get at the root of what caused that situation to happen, to prevent it from happening, and to understand it better, there is absolutely. I'm not saying that rapists should not be held accountable for the actions that they take, and that they are not. They're not responsible for what they do, but. I think there's a very valid argument to be made for the need to really look at why this happens and how we can make it happen less. And so that's the only point that I'm making.
That's the psychologist in you.
Yeah. And so, I mean, maybe that's what I want to study. But
ooh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. But so.
Okay, hit your thing.
So the thing that I was talking about, we were talking about systemic racism in America, I will say, in the judicial system.
Okay.
And I'm comparing it in a metaphor to women in science fields at the graduate level. And what I wanted to say is that as a young female single student, I do expect to receive a certain level of pushback as a student because of that.
As a student,
I do expect to receive a certain amount of harassment, of this. I do expect to see a kind of boys' club to grapple with, to work harder than men do to prove that I belong there. And this is completely based on the feedback of women in these fields. In science, it is very, very well stated, and I think well documented of women's feedback of how these fields are run. And so systemically, and again, I'm not saying that it happens from individual professors being just, I don't like women, I don't want them to succeed. It's about the way that the system is, and being aware of the kind of boys' club mentality that it creates. And
a boys' club where 80% of the academia is female.
I don't think that's true.
80% of psychology students are female.
Students, yes.
Oh, okay.
But people who go as far as
go.
PhD, people who become a successful, noted psychologist.
Are you going to beat the stats? You're going to beat the odds and
that's the plan. But I'm not just talking about psychology. I'm talking about physics. I'm talking about
STEM, science, technology, engineering, math.
Right, and it's just so important that this is understood, that in this system, I do expect to have a harder time succeeding in this system because of my gender and because of my age. And that's a real concern, and it's something that women have to be prepared for when they get into graduate level programs.
I'm dying to hear specific examples. I don't want to put you on the spot.
I mean, I know Cara Santa Maria has talked about it. Cara Santa Maria has talked about it, and I've heard testimony after testimony about it, and I don't.
So, as a student, you're receiving.
Meaning, as a graduate level student,
right?
That's different than like a university.
You're receiving
bachelor's
pushback for being a female.
I'm not in it yet, but I'm saying I expect to.
Oh, okay.
I am trying to.
What if it doesn't come to pass?
Then it didn't happen.
Okay.
But statistically, it is.
You're hearing
worth,
things
worth
and
being
you're
prepared for.
Yes.
Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, in the Marine Corps, we always say, "Hope for the best, expect the worst."
Yeah.
That's what you're doing.
But it's kind of the same as just living in the world as a woman. There's a legitimate more to think about that comes with that. There's a legitimate fear that comes with that, and being prepared for situations. We talked about this with the elevator. If I'm in an elevator alone with.
We talked about this last time, didn't we?
Yeah, with a man.
With Rebecca Watson, 2011.
It's a very real.
If a guy just asks you for coffee to his
no,
hotel
but
room.
I'm just talking. No, we were just talking about when I'm in an elevator alone with a man that I don't know for an extended period of time. There is a certain level of
apprehension.
Well,
uneasy.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And so the woman that was asked to have coffee in the man's room, that she didn't know in the elevator at 2 a.m. at an atheist conference. Yeah, even later at an atheist conference. She gave a video explaining that this is what happens through women's minds.
I'm sorry to pause button you here.
In an elevator.
She was speaking to all men in that video.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you see where we can go, whoa, hey, motherfucker?
No. What?
Do you see where?
No, the point of that.
Listen, man, I can't speak for this motherfucker in the elevator.
Okay. If she's speaking to all men, she's not saying all men do this kind of thing. She's not saying that.
Men if you're listening,
Yeah.
she was speaking to all
Yeah,
goddamn men.
Okay, but men, if you're listening, be aware of what's going on in women's heads. That's I think that's valid. It's not saying that that all men are accused of this thing, or that all men aren't already aware of it. She's saying that, hey guys,
This
be
is a
aware
good
that
segue.
this causes a certain level of fear in women if you do something like this.
This
That's
is
all.
a great segue.
That's all.
Do you have anything more to add? Because I don't want to jump on you.
Okay.
I'm going to give you two
Yeah,
things.
we are way far from the trivia.
We are so
We
far.
haven't done a question in a while.
This trivia test is just an excuse to go on tangents. So don't think we did not plan for this. We did plan for this. This is what we
Sparking
wanted.
conversation.
We had no idea it was going to go down this rabbit hole, but here we are. Okay, you have two choices. You can only pick one. You pick the best one that makes the most progress, okay?
What?
I'm going to give you two ideas.
Okay.
You pick the one that's going to do the most good for society. Okay,
Okay.
ready?
Okay. Is this a trivia thing?
No.
Okay. Got
No,
it.
we're still on the same subject.
Got it.
Teach women and young girls to avoid rape. Teach them how to get out of situations where they can possibly get raped. That's
Okay.
A.
Okay.
B is teach men and young boys to not rape. Teach them ways that they can avoid raping women.
Why do we
A or B.
have to choose one?
If you had to choose one to make the most progress for society, which one would you choose?
That is not fair. No.
my wife off camera.
That's very strange. Okay. Let me point out what the pitfalls of both, okay?
Okay.
The pitfalls of both is that if you can't just focus on women, because that is making men not part of the conversation is completely detrimental. But only speaking to men, only so many men are going to take that message, and women need to be prepared for preventative measures as well.
Do you think that message would
I don't
even
think that
work?
I don't think that in our society women should have to take preventative measures.
Really? Because I'm a licensed rape prevention counselor.
I'm saying I don't think that it's good that women have to do that. That's all I'm saying. But
I don't care if it's good. Is it necessary?
It's necessary, but I'm just saying
Okay.
it shouldn't have to be necessary in our society. I think that we should.
I'm not talking
Get better.
high ground morals.
But you are
I'm
talking about that. You're
no, I'm
talking
talking
about-
about what does the best for society as we are now.
That's
Which would cause
weird.
the least amount of rapes?
I don't.
Teaching girls to not get raped or
Okay.
teaching boys to not rape?
I think neither, because you're not accounting for the other side
Neither-
of that equation.
Neither would.
If you're only focusing on one side of that equation, then that's not going to work. And this goes back to what we were talking
What's
about.
the efficacy of teaching young boys not to rape women? How effective is that?
Okay,
Would that
well,
be?
when you say that, what I see is
The rapists are
respecting-
still going to rape. The non-rapists are still not going to rape.
That's what I mean. But if you don't, but that's what I mean is that the non-rapists, if you,
That sounds so weird.
I know, if you, but again, like teaching, what would that entail? Because it just depends on the program. Because if you're looking at
I taught 55 women in Cuba.
yeah.
At the highest point, I had 55 women in my rape prevention class.
Uh-huh.
I taught them things like, we actually had Tupperware.
No, yeah, no,
We had
I think
Tupperware.
it's absolutely
We practiced
necessary.
making ourselves vomit on ourselves to make
Oh,
us less
yeah.
desirable.
I know.
We did a lot of crazy shit.
Yeah,
Or you know the whole.
yeah.
So that's what I taught.
But-
And if that prevents a rape, that
But-
does an
okay.
a conscious effort towards
Okay.
limiting the amount of
But
rapes.
the problem I have with the question is that, again, you're making it a women's issue. Is that what I just said earlier about
Who cares
rape?
whose issue? Oh, we're talking about decreasing the number of rapes.
Exactly. Who cares whose issue it is? What I'm saying is,
Exactly.
if you make it about if you, if you make the responsibility of preventing this only on women, then it is completely discounting the entire other factor that men play in it.
Well, this is a hypothetical. I'm not saying it should just be one or the other.
What I'm saying is that is awful either way, because if you are just making it about men or just making it about women, you are not creating a society where both parties know something about it and have a part of that conversation. It is that's ridiculous. That would be ridiculous.
Men be taught about, especially in college, freshmen, should there be a mandatory class for the anti-feminist is about to kick my ass. Ready? Should there be a mandatory session for freshman males in college campuses where you learn what consent is? I think probably that might be a good deal.
That's what I told you about.
I'm telling you. That's what I'm saying. It's not A or B.
No, but again,
it's not A or B.
But also, it wasn't a class. It was just a video that you had to watch.
I think I'm down with that.
Yeah, and again, it was
because there might be some out there that don't know what consent is.
But my point is that it wasn't just watched by women and it wasn't just watched by men. It wasn't for just one or the other. It was about educating everyone about how to safely go about these things in a way that respects yourself and respects the person you're with, and is preventing this kind of perpetual mentality that can be created on a college campus.
I think that's a good end. You know what I like about this show is, okay, half the YouTubers you watch, you either have an entire playlist of anti-feminists or you have an entire playlist of feminists. If you're watching this, it could be both. Yeah. I think we're building bridges.
Well, here. and the thing is about you and me and our differences on feminism, I think we are essentially the same on what feminism should be.
Yes, we are definitely.
Yeah, and so that's the point.
We talk past each other a lot.
A little bit, but what I'm saying is that I think you and I agree on the specifics of issues, of certain issues, maybe not all of them, but
I think we agree on probably all of them.
But I think that the difference is how the movement plays out in the world and what is said and what resources get put towards certain issues. And so, you know, I think that again, he for she, for me, is about, I'm not saying you have to agree with it. I'm saying that for me, he for she is an invitation for someone like you to have a voice in the feminist movement and say, hey, let's also look at prostate cancer. I think that is completely valid. And that's what he for she is for me, is that men are just a part of this conversation as women, and that
it's funny true egalitarian feminists, if they are what they claim to be, I've never seen them march for prostate cancer.
Okay, and that's my point, is that that's part of why men need to be part of the conversation. That's it.
We don't get a voice. They suppress our voice.
No, what I'm saying is he for she was exactly that, inviting men to be part of it.
I will look back into that.
It is a UN.
Okay.
It is a UN speech.
I don't know exactly what about that made me want to quit watching, and I watched the whole thing.
Well, and she was called a man-hater on it, and I don't think she was hating men at all.
I'll have to go back and look at it. Some things really touched a nerve, and if she had said what you're saying, I'd be so on board. So I know it wasn't that.
Okay.
It had to have been something else.
There isn't anything that I disagreed with of hers.
It made me want to throw my fist at the screen.
And that's what's so scary about.
But nothing you've said so far made me want to punch a computer monitor. So there's a difference.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last one, I have to pee.
Okay.
Where did Mary?
I thought we were done. Okay.
Oh, are we done? Okay, we'll go on. We're live. Okay, here we go. All right. Where did Mary and Joseph go after Jesus' birth? A, they waited 7 days because Mary was ceremoniously unclean.
That sounds familiar.
And then they went straight to Nazareth. So that's A.
Okay.
They waited 7 days, went to Nazareth. B, they waited 7 days because she was unclean. Then they went to the Passover festival in Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
C is both of those. D is they went straight to Egypt because they were fleeing, because Jesus was, all newborns age 2 and under were about to get killed. So they went to Egypt.
Well, did you just answer that question for me?
No. All right, so the first one is they waited seven. Okay, the first one is they went to Nazareth. Second one, they went to Jerusalem.
Both because
Yeah, the
after 7 days.
third one
because-
is both of those somehow, and this is getting confusing. Okay, anyway, Nazareth, Jerusalem, or Egypt, or any combination of those three, based on discrepancies in the Bible. Let me
I
find.
think I don't know much about that story, but I'm guessing Jerusalem.
You picked
I
the
think
one that
that's
is
what I've
not
heard.
the case. They in
course.
one part of the Bible they waited 7 days, went to Nazareth.
Mm-hmm.
They never went back to Jerusalem. And then in another part of the Bible they fled immediately. They didn't wait the 7 days. They went immediately to Egypt because there was a bounty on his head.
But there was a thing about waiting for a time because she was unclean after the
Right,
birth.
but when King Herod is about to kill all 2-year-olds or
Mm-hmm.
younger, you flee. So they
So they forgave that she was unclean and unfit to
I
travel
guess it was Matthew 2:14. They went immediately to Egypt to get the hell out of there.
because of practical reasons.
Well, because everyone 2 and under was about to get slaughtered.
Yeah.
Which there's no historical account of.
Okay. So what about them traveling would be relevant to her having just given birth?
Oh,
The unclean
way-
thing,
the-
is that a
no,
you
that's
can't
not-
travel if you're
no,
what?
that's not looking out for her safety and welfare. That's looking out for
Okay.
everyone else's.
Right.
Because when you are menstruating
Right.
or when you had just given birth,
Uh-huh.
you are unclean. You have to
Right.
wait a ceremonious, depending on if you give birth to a male or a female, you have to wait a certain number of days
Yeah.
before anyone can even touch you or anything that came off of you.
Yeah, you know what was interesting? I dated a guy that was in college who was his family was Muslim. He identified more as Buddhist, but secretly because he was Muslim.
You dated a Muslim? I gotta
Yeah. hear
hear this. All right,
Yeah.
here we go.
I did. So I was around for Ramadan or Ramadad with a D or an N?
And
N. Okay, Ramadan, which is a fast for
only
with
during the day. You
for a
can
month?
drink and eat during the evening.
I was just about to say that.
Oh, sorry.
A fast for how is a month,
1
right?
month, yeah.
Yeah, 1 month where you only eat when the sun is down.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a really big meal before the sun rises in the morning, and then they have another big meal at the end of the day. And what was interesting is that the younger sister, there was I guess I was asking about it or it was during it or something, but I just found out basically that if the younger sister was menstruating during Ramadan, that she didn't have to fast because the fast was supposed to be a cleansing ritual and she was already unclean, and so she was not able to participate in it during that. And I just, of course, was like, ugh. But
Son of a
actually, because it's a month long, she's going to menstruate at some point during that
Yes.
month, and so for that week, she was not part
She's off the hook.
of Ramadan, right? And on one side of it, yay, but
Exactly right.
But for the main point of it, it's like it's.
Does she still have to wear the beekeeper suit all the time?
Well, they didn't do that.
The black bag?
No. But it's just it creates this idea that women are not only kind of gross and unclean with this natural thing that happens that they don't have any control over, and that it should be seen as either doesn't matter or a part of the cycle of life and kind of sacred in its own way. But what's awful about that is that it makes them a second-class citizen in this way. Is that they are not, they shouldn't participate in this cleansing ritual because they're already unclean.
Yeah, I see where you're going.
And so it's like they're not worth the
time of the
yeah,
effort.
and the ritual, you know, so many people that practice these religions, the ritual is a way of connecting to their belief and
a rite of passage.
Well, and it's part of serving their God and you know.
And you don't get to be a part of that when
right.
you're menstruating.
And it's it was gross. And you know, and the older brother who I dated wasn't really allowed to date, but it was okay. But she was like really not allowed to date, and the rules around her dating, if she did, was really interesting. It was that she had to be chaperoned by her brother,
any male relative.
Yeah, and I think there has to be a marriage proposal before you go on a date at all.
Alone together.
And it's just, you know, because the same rules aren't applied
what country are they
to
from?
the men.
Sounds like Saudi.
He was, they were Iranian.
Oh, she is. There she is. Okay.
But they were Americans. So so the father was from Iran, and the mother was previously Lutheran, and I think.
That's a hell of a combination, right
yeah.
there.
And she was
the oldest Protestant denomination.
Right. She was Latino, and they were married, and she converted to
Did you guys
Muslim.
ever talk about ideology, or how long did you date? Was it serious, or
it was about a year.
he knew you were an atheist?
No, I was a Christian at the time. This was during my trip to India.
Okay, so according to Muslims, Christians and Jews are people of the book.
Okay.
They get a little special. They're still assholes.
Well, they still didn't want him to ever get too serious with me.
Right,
they wanted him
right.
to marry a Muslim.
But if you were an atheist,
yeah,
they wouldn't even have allowed it.
Yeah.
If you were an infidel, it's a big difference.
But also I was
Christians and Jews.
I was kind of on my way to atheism, because that's what started it, was my trip to India, and he and I had just started to become a serious relationship right before I left to go to India. And when I came back, I think we were together for quite a while. Before we broke up.
If you had stayed a Christian, his parents would have tolerated you hanging out with their son, because you were at least a person of the book.
Yeah, I think
they
hate
hate you,
right,
but not as much as they hate all the others.
I think I didn't identify as an atheist until a couple years later when I went to UTA. And I joined Free Thinkers of UTA because I already saw myself as kind of agnostic. But I always, at that time, I thought that, basically, real quick, going to India kind of showed me that the reason that whatever I believed was because of where I was born. It didn't make it true. So if I had been born there, I would have been a whole other religion. And so when I came back, I started to kind of, think that maybe there isn't a particular reason that I should believe this thing just because I was born here. And so I should think about it more. And so I kind of became more generally Christian instead of what my parents believed. And then I sort of dropped out of belief in a higher power at all. But I kind of assumed at the time that I was gonna be agnostic, and then eventually I would find something that spoke to me. And that whole concept is kind of annoying about, doesn't make anything true. You're not fact checking. It's about what speaks to you. It's kind of annoying. But for me, I didn't become, I didn't identify as an atheist officially until I went to Free Thinkers of UTA in Texas, and was kind of given the definition between Gnostic and agnostic, and theist and atheist. So Gnostic being you claim to know for sure that whatever you believe is absolutely true, and agnostic is not claiming that. It's kind of a spectrum between the two.
Gnostic, agnostic is a position on knowledge.
Right.
Theist, atheist is a position on belief.
Right.
You can be a Gnostic. Right. They're not mutually exclusive.
Right.
Yeah.
So like my, some Christians, my parents included, would claim to be Gnostic theists. They believe in a higher power, and they claim to know for sure that this is the truth with a capital
theists,
T.
around here are
Yeah, I mean,
Gnostic.
like, moderates aren't gonna do that. You know, they're like, believe what you want, I believe what I want, let's all be happy and coexist, and that's great. But they would, by definition, be agnostic theists, is that they would not claim to know for sure that what they believe is absolutely true, but they believe in it anyway.
How many of those have you ever met?
I have no idea. I haven't really had this
There's none
conversation a
around
lot with, but people, you know, it depends on what context they're talking. If you really get them to, like, trust that you're not attacking them, and in a debate where they have to defend their beliefs, you know, that's a whole nother psychological state that might make them a little bit more assertive about what they think. But, you know, if you actually have people break down what they actually think, sometimes it gets more into that gray area. But for me, I learned that I wasn't just agnostic, I was an agnostic atheist, because I didn't believe in the higher power, and I don't think that you can choose to believe or not. You either believe or you don't.
Belief is not a choice. It's gosh damn, I can't remember the word. It's not a revelation. It just comes to you.
Yeah, we talked about this when we did the Q&A at the First Baptist.
Yeah. And I couldn't remember it then either.
Yeah, but yeah, so atheist is looking at whether you believe or not, and Gnostic versus agnostic is your percentage of certainty, I guess, is how much you claim to be certain.
Belief is not a choice, it's a realization.
Yeah.
You don't get to choose. I can't choose that this is a glass of wine. This is a bottle of beer.
But so, and what's
it's
interesting
a realization.
is
you don't
that,
get to choose.
Yeah, and so
If God wants me to be a theist,
right,
He would give me enough ample evidence to meet the threshold for me to become a theist, and He has not done that yet. The onus is on Him.
Well, and I've explained this to believers as well, that there was never a point when I was becoming an atheist that I particularly wanted to not believe in this. What happened was I felt like I learned so much about the religion itself and about outside perspectives and science and things like that, that I lost my ability to keep my faith, and that's kind of how I describe it, is that I wasn't able to sustain my belief because I felt that I had learned too much in order to do that, and so that's kind of how I describe it.
Say
to
that
people.
again.
That because when I was kind of shaken with the whole worldview of this is only true because I was born here.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
And so then I came back and immediately I took geology, and I learned about evolution and then the scientific method and all these things that made me kind of systematically look at it from a critical view versus just believing it because it's what I was taught or it's what I wanted to be true. Because I really loved my faith when I was a believer, and it wasn't something that I wanted to lose. But again,
It's very comforting.
I learned so much about a lot of these things. I took world religions, and I took geology, and then I took the next semester of it, which was historical geology, which dealt a lot more with fossils and evidence-based things, archaeology, carbon dating, all these things. And so it became so important to me to be accurate, to find out what is true instead of what holds value for me personally. And so once I started to look at what was once I started to value more that something is true versus it's what sounds good or what feels right to me or what my family taught me, then I started to seek out actual evidence, and then that's where I became an atheist, because again I feel like I learned so much about this topic that I wasn't able to believe it anymore. So
Great segue. Well, I don't know if it's a segue, but great ending. Okay. Which of these did not come to visit the baby Jesus?
Mm-hmm.
Who did not come to visit the baby Jesus?
Okay.
3 kings and a drummer boy?
I don't think that's true.
Shepherds? 2 or more astrologers? Or angels? So we got 3 kings and a drummer boy?
Drummer boy?
Is that your answer?
Yeah. Because that's a Christmas song. And so much of those Christmas traditions are like...
Yep, drummer boy's never mentioned in the Bible.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so.
So the shepherds,
because
yes.
it's kind of like a nice, it's a story for Christians. And I don't think they think that that's actually true.
I don't think they do either.
No.
I got to give them that.
Yeah.
But the 2 or more astrologers, that's a reference to the 3 kings.
That would make sense,
They weren't kings, they were magi, which were astrologers. And it never said there was 3 of them, it just said there was 2 or more, the way the Bible was written. The 3 kings of Nazareth, they were 2 or more astrologers. I'm sorry. Yeah, astrologers, not astronomers.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They were astrologers.
Studiers.
They were
studying
fake
the actual
astronomy.
Okay.
And then angels, of course, because Joseph
what's-
and Mary were
which-
both visited by angels before Jesus was even born.
Which one is which? Can you break that down?
Astrology is not taught in school.
Okay.
That's the star signs and how you being born, like I was
So study of the stars.
November 29th. I used to be born under the sign Sagittarius, but now that they added a 13th constellation, did you know this? There's
I don't follow the whole horoscope thing.
Ophiuchus. Have you heard of Ophiuchus?
There have been enough studies to discount all of that. So.
Of course this is all
Horoscopes,
bullshit, but
yeah.
now of November 29th is born under Ophiuchus, which is I went from half man, half horse, like a centaur. Now I'm a snake.
That's a cool thing.
I'm a snake now.
So now your whole personality's changed.
Of course.
That'd
But
be a
here's
frat
the
boy
deal.
line, though.
Yeah, totally. I was never a frat boy. What about identical twins that are born in the exact same star sign at roughly the same time? The exact same, and then they have totally different personalities. So, of course, astrology, come on. It's complete woo-woo. It's not taught.
Yeah,
and then
I think the
astronomy is, of course...
I think the larger distinction is the study of personalities and behavior. It does not consult the stars. It doesn't consult birth.
And it's so subjective. You talk to one astrologer and you read these.
And that's the thing. It's the same as what we hear again and again from scientists like Lawrence Krauss and Richard Dawkins, is that the study of science, it's physics and biology and evolution and all that. These studies don't need to consult a higher power to work. The theories don't need to
they work just as well without all that.
to have a supernatural entity put into it in order for them
Occam's razor.
to
The
operate
simplest
and make
explanation tends to be the right one.
And so I think that's the horoscope thing and personality and psychology. It's another perfectly valid example about when you talk about stuff we actually know about personality, about behavior, about motivations of behavior. About birth days and birth orders and all that, these things that we've studied already, it doesn't overlap with horoscope stuff. It's not part of the conversation because it's not relevant. And when you actually get down to knowing something about these things, that's what's worth the time is using the scientific method to get at, again, what is true. And maybe that's why I have such an interest in finding out what is true, because of my background in leaving my religion, where I started to value what's real, what's true, versus what sounded good. So
don't look at the screen.
Okay.
Look away. This year. What month are you? What's your birthday?
April 10th. I think
April
I'm
10th.
Aries.
Okay. Don't look over on the screen.
Your mic's blocking.
Okay. Here's your horoscope. This year.
Oh gosh.
Don't look over here.
I can't see it.
Okay.
I can't see it.
This year, focus on your own well-being above all else. You can increase your material wealth and health this way, and also structure for a more stable future. With Mars and the asteroid Ceres starting the year in your sign, you have the energy to nurture and grow the future you want.
How do they come up with this stuff?
Your planet Venus is in retrograde this year. Rethink any previous decisions and find improvements during this one. Does that sound like you?
Yes. But that could be
Yeah,
anybody.
you're Aries, right?
That's my age.
That's
Yeah,
Aries, right? Yeah, this was Taurus.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
That sounds exactly like me. But
They all sound
again,
exactly like you.
Exactly. It's so vague.
Vague.
And yeah.
This
Yeah.
was Taurus.
And that study, that's a little anecdotal one-person study. It's not exactly, statistically whatever. But
As
but
opposed to
actual,
what in astrology?
Actual.
There is no database of astrology.
Wait, I'm saying that actual double-blind studies have been done on the validity of horoscopes to the person, and it's like, no,
Exactly.
do not.
Okay,
Do
one
not
more.
matter. I think Richard Dawkins did a little study on that too in one of his documentaries.
Who's the old dude that had the $1 Million Challenge? James Randi. He's debunked so many astrologers. It's pathetic.
Oh yeah, there was an interesting challenge that nobody's taken them up on yet.
The
About
$1 Million Psychic Challenge.
well, no, not psychic. It was
Any supernatural.
no, it was Hitchens. It was Christopher Hitchens. He talked about he gave a challenge.
Yeah.
That you had to
Name-
bring.
Oh,
Wait, I'm saying. Hold
sorry.
on. Bring. You have to name something, an action,
Mm-hmm.
like a moral action that a person who is secular can't do, but a religious person can. And so any moral action that can be taken, that can only be taken by a religious person and not by a secular person, and nobody can answer that.
The closest anyone has ever gotten is praying for well-being. Because a secular person could not do that.
Yeah, you can meditate for well-being.
No, praying for well-being. A religious person could only do that.
Yeah, but that's specific.
But, of course,
that's specific to that makes it, of course, only able to be that person.
That's exactly what he was asking.
No, but the point is
But
that
the
that
efficacy of intercessory prayer is
Yeah.
exactly the same as random chance. So that's ineffective.
Okay, but what I'm saying is I actually did this in India, in one of my workshops, because the trip to India, by the way, wasn't just like go to India. It was a leadership program for young people, and the point of it was to learn how to be world leaders now. I was 19 at the time. It was called Sustainable Global
Freshman
Leader.
class?
No, it was the program was for anybody between the ages of like 16 and 24. And it wasn't part of any like school or church or anything like that. It wasn't a mission trip. It was a leadership program that was an educational nonprofit that was
What
called,
an opportunity.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was called Sustainable Global Leadership Alliance. And part of it was we did these workshops on nonviolent communication, which focuses on clearly communicating what you mean by what you say, and getting at not name calling and not labeling people or labeling what they're saying, but speaking very clearly about and calmly about what you actually mean, and trying to communicate and find mutual understanding. So nonviolent communication is very valuable. It teaches you kind of how to be an appropriate moderator for conversations too, how to not be biased.
I would love to be a part of that.
It was great. So that was just one workshop that we did. We did SimSoc, which was Simulated Society, and that was really cool. It was 2 days, and I actually did this with the Muslim guy that I dated. He did this with my dad and a lot of like family members that we had. But SimSoc was about creating a society with a lot of the challenges that societies do have. And it was really interesting because they put you into 3 different groups, and my group was it was red. So they had red, yellow, and green. And the green group had a much nicer room.
I see
And
where this is going.
they had plenty of money, and they had plenty of what they called sustenance, which was sustenance tickets. Each person needed a sustenance ticket to get to the next level, the next round. And you could have tickets to travel to different countries. And so it was 3 different countries, and our country had nothing. And we were the red team. We couldn't travel. We couldn't seek out help. We didn't have any sustenance. And what ended up happening was somebody ended up visiting us, and they were able to help us get to the next level and give us sustenance that they had that was extra. And we ended up working for the yellow team in order to earn sustenance for us. And the green team that had plenty of stuff, they created a socialist society where everything gets put in the pot and everybody has what they need. And it was just really, really, really interesting to kind of have to deal with the problems that you have. But it was a psychological thing too, because the room that the red team was in, was this little tiny closet with a tiny table and chairs that were broken and turned over, and it was supposed to, really create this thing. And what's cool is it stops being a game very quickly.
It's like Lord of the Flies at the end, isn't it?
Kind of, yeah. It was cool. But the people that we did it with was all the people that we were doing this trip to India with. This was all before we went, and so this was just one of the what they called weekend intensives, was these kind of workshops that we did, and so that was one of them. And so you do this thing for 2 days, and things play out as they do, and then at the end everybody sits down and talks about what happened, and what they think about it, and what they thought of this person and what they did, and blah blah blah. It was really, really cool, because you really got to know who these people really are, because again, this stops being a game very quickly and people get really into it.
Attached.
Yeah, and it was really cool. But it really gets you thinking about government and what do you do with these people, and all of them have inherent value, and
it's a very complex issue.
Yeah, it was awesome.
It's not necessarily one right answer.
Yeah, it's something that you can do with a group of people for I don't know how much money, but I'm sure it was a good amount. But it was really, really interesting. SimSoc.